Welcome to the channel, ladies and gentlemen. Why is the Hellraiser reboot taking so long to make, or why has it taken so long to make? It's been about, it's been over 10 years. It's been a really long time. It's been nearly 15 years we've been promised a Hellraiser reboot or remake, and this article explains some stuff really well, and then others it glosses over. So as I talk about Hellraiser quite a lot on my channel, I thought we would take a look at it together, because if I don't kind of clear up some of what I consider to be kind of misinformation, and I'm not slamming the article because it's actually quite good for the most part, but if I don't go and clarify some of the stuff, if in later videos I say things that contradict this, then people will go as, why, basically. So I thought we'd take a look at it together, compliment the good and talk about the bad, and just give my thoughts as well. If you don't know me or my channel or anything like that, quite big on Hellraiser here, or have been across the years. In fact, I've done what they talk about in this is actually the Clive Barker Hellraiser remake script. I've had that detailed here on my channel, along with many other scripts which they don't really talk about, but there are a few of them there. And I think if you're familiar with the scripts that I've done here on this channel for the reboots and remakes, you'll realise actually why it's taken so long, because it's not really what they're saying, and those scripts indicate that as well, very clear cut in fact. But we'll take a look at it together, and I think you guys will enjoy this deep dive. Check out my entire Hellraiser playlist for this, I think you'll enjoy it. But let's dive right in, right? A movie reboot of the Hellraiser franchise finally seems to have some forward momentum, but one has been in development for over a decade. As iconic a horror villain as Pinhead is, the overall franchise he starred in has had way more downs than ups. Writer-director Clive Barker's original Hellraiser film is considered a timeless classic by most fans, and some consider Hellbound Hellraiser 2 to be one of the most satisfying horror sequels ever made. After that, though, it's largely downhill. Now, in terms of the remake that they're talking about, or the reboot, it's been confirmed, but we've had no further update on it. Now, the reboot is by it's going to be by Spyglass Media Group, okay, which was Spyglass Films, and this is now their new iteration, their new company, and this was going to be their brand new confirmed theatrical movie, their first theatrical movie that they would be releasing under their new brand name. The downside to that is it's being written by David Goyer. Now, David Goyer's fine. He's neither amazing or bad. He's done some very good stuff in the past, but I think his success is actually the reason for his downfall and the negativity towards his work now. He has written some fantastic stuff, and as a result of that, it has made him be a sought-after writer in Hollywood, so much so that his work is spread very thin. He works on countless things all the time, and when he's not working on countless things, when he was up and coming, he produced quite good stuff. I believe he did Dark City. I like Dark City a lot. I think it's fantastic. But then in his later years, as he's become more and more popular, he has spread his work too thin. So like I said, his success is his own downfall, unfortunately. Now it continues, and it says Hellraiser 3 Hell on Earth is decent enough, but it pales in comparison to the first two and turns Pinhead into a Freddy Krueger-esque comedian. Hellraiser Bloodlines is widely disliked, and its own director disowned it. Hellraiser Inferno, directed by pre-Doctor Strange Scott Derrickson, was a sizable uptick from Bloodline, but Hellseeker was okay at best. Deader and Hellworld, the final two entries that featured Doug Bradley as Pinhead, were pretty terrible, despite the presence of a young Henry Cavill in Hellworld. Now, those movies actually, because it goes on to then say, and it talks about Deader, Hellworld, and then it says Revelations and Judgment, which were the two latest movies which didn't have Doug Bradley. But it tries to frame it, so it says also Dimension Films could retain control of the franchise, as that these two films, Revelations and Judgment, were the only rights retainers. Every film after Bloodlines were rights retainers. All of the straight-to-DVD films were rights retainers. They were only made to retain the rights. They were, in fact, even made as previous scripts which were not even related to Hellraiser, and then they were retroactively turned into Hellraiser movies. So this is kind of where the misinformation starts to spread a little bit. Not massively, because for the most part, it's fine. It's not a bad Screen Rant article. And I say that as someone that doesn't really like Screen Rant, because they have appropriated some of my work in the past and not given me credit. Recently, actually, because side note for those that completely think I'm just talking out my arse, they referenced my interview with William Eubank, the director of Underwater. Literally the entire article was taking excerpts from my interview, but they didn't share my interview. They just said me by name. Bit of an issue with that, to be fair, but never mind. So anyway, like I say, it's a fine article, but this is where the misinformation starts to happen. So Dimension Films could retain control of the franchise, so as rights holders. That was literally every film, basically. The straight-to-DVD films, all that. But then it continues and says, Pinhead is way overdue for a film worthy of his grandeur, and in 2019 a theatrical reboot was announced, yet that's far from the first time that's happened, which is true. Now, it goes on to talk about the 2006 Clive Barker reboot or remake for Dimension Films. Now, that's interesting because in 2006, he actually didn't even have a treatment to pitch. He just announced that he was going to do it, and that was for some cash, which we can see here. I've got that. I've got the remake. So when it was announced in 2006, he hadn't even done it. He did not actually have a script treatment at all. Now it continues, and that never happened because it wasn't a particularly great one either, unfortunately. And that was a clear-cut remake with some subtle differences, but not different enough for it to be, a valued entry to the franchise, even by the man who created it. And it says, in 2007, French directing duo Julien Maury and Alexandre Bustillo were brought on to helm the project. And that's when he then submitted his script treatment. And this is where it gets interesting. It says, by 2008, they had exited over creative differences with Bob Weinstein of Dimension Films. Now, again, this is where we start to talk about it was just creative differences time and time again. I don't think that's really the case. If you read that script, now obviously we don't know. What he's saying here is conjecture. But if you that script treatment's terrible. It's not good film. It's fine, like it's not bad, but it's not good enough to warrant its existence, if that makes any sense. So these creative differences, no, I disagree entirely. Now it says that all three directors clashed with Weinstein's vision for a new Hellraiser, which involved the remake having more mainstream appeal and attractive to a teen audience. Well, look, the running theme throughout all of this is that basically nothing has happened because Weinstein wanted it to be, wider appeal. And that's not strictly true, because all of the scripts that he was getting, because I've got them, I've been doing videos on them, were all very mainstream. I did one recently, which was written by the Saw guys. Terrible movie. Oh, good God, it was bad. The script was terrible. And most of these script treatments, most of them, are all very... Like, one was written by the Underworld writer. It even literally has quotations. She looks like Kate Beckinsale. Like, it's total trash. All of these have mainstream appeal, but they cost too much. And so the bulk of this article, so it says, this thread of creative battles continued in 2010 with director Patrick Lussier and writer Todd Farmer were hired after they made My Bloody Valentine. And again, booted off. It just keeps going along these lines. Lussier and Farmer were fired. Barker himself re-entered the picture, saying he'd made a deal to write. That was in 2013. That, again, I've got that script. It's not particularly great. And then by 2017, Barker revealed that no progress had been made. He'd submit the script. We've got the script. It's just not a very good script. It's all too much money. That's the reason why none of these were made. Because what they're saying here, and because I've got them, like I've been doing videos on them. So this is where the misinformation starts to come. Because none of this has been spoken about publicly. No one said, oh yeah, it's because of creative differences and we want more mainstream appeal. Everyone wants more mainstream appeal, right? Hellraiser as a BDSM fetishist style horror flick doesn't really have mainstream appeal. So it's obvious that they would want it to have more mainstream appeal because they want more money, right? They want to actually make some money off of this. So if you're going to make it in the tone of an actual Hellraiser movie that it needs to be, then it has to be cheap. But no one's writing them cheap. And the reason why I say it has to be cheap is because it doesn't have mainstream appeal, so no one's going to pay for it. And it pains me to say it because I love the Hellraiser franchise. I think it's fantastic. Definitely some missteps and things like that, but at its core, it's epic. And I've been doing a script treatment recently, which is Hellraiser Below and Beyond. Check it out. We're up to part 4 now. Part 5 should be released at the weekend. And that's more of a return to form. But when you take a look at it, the grandeur of it, it's just too expensive. Way too expensive. But that's what's needed to make this into something. But unfortunately, as horror's moved and ebbed and flowed across the years, we're now at a stage where you can't do these movies for the budget which is required. Now, I personally think a budget of $60 million movie, Deadpool was a $60 million movie, $60 or $50 million, something like that, you know, and being very smart about what effects you use, very enclosed, very small, claustrophobic almost, that sort of budget, that sort of film, that's where your real money is. That's where you're going to make something good. That's where you're also going to return to your grassroots of Hellraiser and horror. So like I say, this whole stuff here, all of this, as it goes on and on and on, and starts talking about creative differences and stuff like this and blah, blah, blah. And then it says Dimension Films are out of the picture now. Harvey Weinstein's gone. Spyglass Media Group are here producing the latest attempt at a reboot and a remake. Hopefully the 5th time ends up being the charm. It will only be, and it pains me to say it, if the budget's right. That's only, it has to be. The budget's got to be kept in check. Because these $100 million movie for a Hellraiser, are you insane? That's not what you do. You can't do that. You're never going to make your money back on that. Ever. And again, it pains me to say it. It really pains me to say it. But there you go. Anyway, guys, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. And again, I'm not slamming Screen Rant or the writer of this article. I think the majority of it is right, but the narrative of creative differences is definitely wrong. You only have to take a rudimentary look through the scripts that I've done on this channel to realise that they just would have been too expensive. But they're very much more in line with this mainstream slasher flick. It just wouldn't... It's not going to make money. It's too expensive. So, anyway, guys, let me know your thoughts down below in the comments. If you're new here, do it, subscribe, stay up to date on the world of pop culture movie news by hitting the bell notification icon. Thanks so much. Take care.